She walked into Gestapo headquarters carrying a suitcase full of secrets. One wrong word, one nervous glance, and she'd be tortured and executed. But Krystyna Skarbek wasn't just any spy. She was Churchill's favorite agent, a woman so fearless that even the Nazis who interrogated her would later call her the bravest person they ever met. This is the true story of how one Polish countess became Britain's most decorated female spy, saved countless lives, and pulled off an escape so audacious it still seems impossible today. September 1939. The world watched in horror as Nazi Germany's war machine crushed Poland in just weeks. But while armies fell and governments fled, one woman decided she would not accept defeat. Her name was Krystyna Skarbek, though history would come to know her by her British codename, Christine Granville. Born into Polish nobility in 1908, Krystyna seemed destined for a life of privilege. A champion skier, beauty queen finalist, and countess by marriage, she had everything to lose. But when Poland fell, she lost it all anyway. Her country, her home, her family's safety, everything she loved was now under Nazi occupation. So she made a choice that would change everything. She would fight back, and she would do it in the most dangerous way possible. In December 1939, Krystyna arrived in London with a bold proposal for British intelligence. She would return to Nazi-occupied territory as a spy. No formal training, no military background, just courage, languages, and an intimate knowledge of the mountains between Poland and Hungary. The British were skeptical. Women weren't typically used as field agents, especially not in occupied territories. But Krystyna had something they desperately needed. She could ski through treacherous mountain passes that no one else could navigate, and she knew people on both sides of the border. Within weeks, she was smuggling intelligence reports, propaganda materials, and Allied airmen through the frozen Carpathian Mountains. The routes were so dangerous that even experienced mountaineers refused to attempt them in winter. Krystyna made the journey repeatedly, often in blizzards, with German patrols hunting for her on both sides. But she wasn't just a courier. Krystyna began building an intelligence network, recruiting agents, and gathering information about German troop movements. She was so effective that by 1941, she had helped evacuate dozens of people from occupied Poland and Hungary, including several Allied POWs who would have otherwise died in captivity. And then, in 1941, her luck ran out. In January 1941, Krystyna was arrested by the Gestapo in Hungary. They suspected she was a British spy, and they were right. If convicted, she faced torture and execution. Her fellow agent, Andrzej Kowarski, was also captured. Everything they'd built, every person they'd saved, was about to be destroyed. The Gestapo brought her in for questioning. They searched her belongings. They questioned her contacts. And they were building a case that would send her to the firing squad. But Krystyna Skarbek was not someone who accepted defeat easily. As she sat in that interrogation room, she came up with a plan so audacious, so brilliantly insane, that it shouldn't have worked. But it did. She bit her tongue, hard, until it bled profusely. Then she began coughing, spitting blood into her handkerchief, collapsing as if gravely ill. She convinced the Gestapo officers that she had tuberculosis. In 1941, a highly contagious and often fatal disease that terrified everyone, including the Nazis. The Gestapo, afraid of infection, wanted her out of their headquarters immediately. But Krystyna wasn't done. She needed to save Andrzej too. Using her network of contacts, she managed to get a message to the British ambassador, claiming diplomatic protection. She invented connections to Lord Mountbatten and other British officials. The British, remarkably, backed her story. Whether they knew it was partly fabricated or not, they applied diplomatic pressure. Combined with the fear of tuberculosis and the threat of British retaliation, the Gestapo faced a dilemma: hold a possibly infected agent who might have powerful connections, or let her go. Against all odds, they released both Krystyna and Andrzej. The Gestapo had captured one of Britain's most valuable agents, and she had talked her way out using nothing but blood from her own tongue and sheer nerve. After her escape from the Gestapo, you might think Krystyna would take a desk job in London. Instead, in 1944, she parachuted into occupied France just after D-Day. Now using the name Christine Granville, she was tasked with supporting the French resistance in the lead-up to the Allied liberation. She worked in the mountainous Workers region, coordinating between resistance groups, sabotaging German communications, and preparing for the Allied advance through southern France. She was so effective that she convinced entire units of Polish conscripts forced to serve in the German army to desert and join the Allies. But her most remarkable achievement was still to come. In August 1944, as Allied forces pushed through France, two of her fellow British agents, Francis Cammerts and Zan Fielding, were captured by the Gestapo along with a French resistance leader. They were being held in Digny prison, scheduled for execution the following morning. Krystyna had hours to save them. Not days. Hours. And she was just one woman against an entire Gestapo garrison. What she did next became legendary in intelligence circles. She marched straight to the prison and demanded to speak to the commanding officer. When he arrived, she looked him in the eye and delivered one of the greatest bluffs in espionage history. She told him that Allied forces were just hours away, which was partly true. But then she added that she was a British agent, revealing her own identity, and that if he executed the prisoners, his name was already on a list. He would be hunted down and tried as a war criminal. However, if he released them, she personally would testify that he had cooperated with the Allies and saved their lives. To sweeten the deal, she offered him a bribe of 2 million francs. She didn't actually have 2 million francs, but the officer didn't know that. Then she played her final card. She told him she had contacts with the resistance fighters in the surrounding hills, and if anything happened to her, they would ensure he never escaped France alive. The officer, seeing the writing on the wall as Allied forces genuinely approached, made his choice. Hours before dawn, with execution orders already prepared, he released all 3 prisoners into Krystyna's custody. She had walked into a Gestapo prison and walked out with 3 condemned men, using nothing but courage, intelligence, and an extraordinary ability to read people under pressure. Francis Cammerts later said that Christine Granville was the bravest person he had ever met, and that included every soldier, spy, and resistance fighter he'd encountered during the entire war. When the war ended in 1945, Krystyna Skarbek had become one of the most decorated women in British military history. She received the George Medal, the OBE, and the French Croix de Guerre. Churchill called her his favorite spy. Her fellow agents spoke of her with awe. But peacetime Britain had little use for a Polish countess who spoke 5 languages and could kill a man with her bare hands. Despite her service, she was denied British citizenship initially. The country she had risked everything to save treated her as a foreigner. She took work where she could find it, eventually working as a stewardess on ocean liners. The woman who had outsmarted the Gestapo was serving tea to passengers who had no idea they were being helped by one of history's greatest spies. Tragically, the fearless woman who had survived countless Nazi encounters met her end in the most ordinary of circumstances. In 1952, at just 44 years old, she was murdered in a London hotel by a jealous acquaintance who had become obsessed with her. The war hadn't killed her, but peace did. Her death shocked everyone who had known her. Britain finally recognized what it had lost. She was buried with military honors, and over time, historians began to fully appreciate just how extraordinary her contributions had been. Krystyna Skarbek's story is one of remarkable courage, quick thinking, and an absolute refusal to be defeated. She wasn't a trained soldier or a career intelligence officer. She was a woman who saw evil taking over her world and decided to fight back, no matter the cost. Her techniques, building networks, using psychology rather than violence, and maintaining cover under extreme pressure, are still studied in intelligence training today. Ian Fleming, creator of James Bond, knew Krystyna personally, and many believe she was one of the inspirations for his strong female characters. She proved that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. Walking into that prison in France to save 3 condemned men, she must have been terrified. biting her tongue to fake tuberculosis in front of the Gestapo. Her heart must have been racing. But she did it anyway. Today, there are plaques commemorating her in both Poland and Britain. Her story has been told in books and documentaries. But for decades, she remained largely unknown, her files classified, her achievements buried in secrecy. Krystyna Skarbek deserves to be remembered not just as a spy, but as one of the most courageous people of the 20th century. A woman who saved countless lives, defeated the Gestapo through sheer willpower, and showed that sometimes one person really can change the course of history. If you found Krystyna's story as incredible as I did, make sure you're subscribed, because we're uncovering more forgotten heroes every week. Check out our video on another historical figure up here or a related topic right here. What other untold stories from World War II should we cover next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.